Macro Dirt podcast number 3. What is up, my dog?
What is up, monkey balls?
How are you, man? Everything good today?
Yeah, everything's good. Yeah, I slept in this morning.
Did you? Isn't that a great
Yeah,
feeling?
yeah. It was like the bed and the temperature and the light and everything was the most. It was like the comfiest possible, and I'm like, I do not want to get out of bed. Like it was
60,
awesome.
65 degrees over or under?
Oh, over. We keep it at 72. Yeah.
Oh, when I go to sleep in a dark room, I put it at 65. And actually, I have it downstairs on 62. That's why I'm wearing a flannel inside my house in
Dude,
July.
it's like SAC in your house.
It is. No, literally. It's like a meat locker. My wife walks around with 3 sweatshirts on. but it's the only way that I can survive. We got to talk about the stock market. We got a 5650 print up. I tweeted 5650 with a little sunglasses smiley face. The market went straight down 10 fucking S&P points. What are you thinking, bro?
Dude. All right. So we are both in the business of like punditry. We are market pundits, right? We also trade. I trade, you trade. But trading your reputation is different from trading actual capital. And your reputation is actually more valuable, right? So you want to do things that protect your reputation at all costs. So I think it was Cuppy that said to you on Twitter, like, "Hey, TikTok, this rally is getting pretty extended. You would rather be early to hop off than to be late. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because this, the way I look at the market is." This reminds me, I mean, look, I started trading in 99. You started trading a little earlier. But when I was at Lehman, middle of the 2000s, 2005, 2006, the market was moving in like a 10 to 20 basis point range. The VIX was below 10. It actually got below 9 on one day. Volatility was crushed. And we just went up like 10 or 20 basis points a day for like 200 days in a row. And it just went on forever, But when it broke, that was like the starting gun for the financial crisis, and things got really ugly. So it actually broke we talked about this last week in February of 07. Then it made new highs in the summer of 07, and that's when all hell broke loose. So my advice to you is you have one of the greatest calls in the history of calls, right? Like just take profits reputationally, walk away. Like it's one of these things, like if you're worried about missing more upside, like if we have 200 points more of upside, it's fine. Like it's fine.
Yeah.
But if we go down the poop chute for 10%, like it's all for nothing.
You got to understand now. This is you pushing back on my view, but my view and my trading go very much hand in hand, right? I understand that the reputation credibility is better, but I've also got the positions on. I mean, the view matrix looks like my trading account, right? So my point is, like, my method is always leave a trailing stop and let the market take you out. So my take profits are never selling into a high. They're always selling into a drawdown from the high.
I know
right?
that.
Where I decide that it's too much of a drawdown for me. And now I get out and I can still say, okay, that was it. We made a peak. We're turning now. And that's when I'll get out, because this is the thing, Jared. This is looking more and more like 94, 95, 96, 97 to me every day. And if it is going to be a multi-year phenomenon where NVIDIA is going to continue doing what it's doing, and an NVIDIA chart, by the way, has shown no signs of letting up, like none whatsoever. So I can't even get excited for that pullback. And if I can't get excited for that pullback and the DMARC 13s and the NASDAQ and this and that, I can't sell into strength, right? I see all of this stock almanac stuff going on right now, right? The historic stuff that comes out, right? The S&P outperformance from the equal weighted S&P is so blown out right now. It only happened once before the crash, et cetera. But this is the thing where bull markets can go on longer than shorts can stay solvent. So I'm going to stick with my guns politely and push back. Now, if there's one type of thing that I will do I'm out on, It's that if we start seeing S&P gaps higher, like Nvidia news comes out and it starts gapping to a new all-time high, that's something that I'll say, okay, this was a great last push, and I'm willing to take things off the table there. So that's my rant on profit taking in stocks.
Yeah, that works. I mean, you and I have very different styles. You know me, like I enter a trade at the scariest possible moment when like all hell is breaking loose. And then
Yes.
I sell a couple of months later when the coast is clear. And you
Yeah.
are typically buying when I'm selling, and you ride the trend all the way to the end, and then there's a drawdown and you get out. So this is actually kind of a pitch for our newsletters, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great
Because
point.
because if you subscribe to the Daily Dirt Nap and TG Macro, you'll get the first half of the trend with me. You'll get the second half of the trend with you. Like, you can tell people when to get out. I can tell people when to get in. You know.
That is a good way of looking at it. And I have a feeling that that's why many people have said to me that we are one of their favorite 1-2 combo newsletter writers. And not to
Yeah.
pat ourselves on the back too much, but that's a real thing. And that's something I'm proud of. So I'm not afraid to talk about it a little bit humbly. You said something that struck me before about volatility. You can talk about it probably better than I am, but we do all know that this level of complacency, and we don't know when, my argument that it's going to be much longer than anyone thinks, but low vol disappears quickly, right? Like low vol, once it's gone, it's gone. What do you think of that? Are we going to go into a regime here where we sell off and then all of a sudden we have months and months of, 15 to 20 VIX, or are we just going to have a spike to 35 on some kind of a disaster, and that's something that you buy? What do you think? Are we going to move out of this low volatility range and start really whipping around? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think so. Like, if you go back to '07, you had the vol spike on February 27th, where the VIX went from 10 to 18. Then it
Hmm.
consolidated a little bit. And then in the summer, the VIX was in the 30s. When the shit was hitting the fan in the summer of '07, VIX was in the 30s. So my theory on this is that the transition from a low vol regime to a high vol regime is often violent, right?
Hmm.
It's very violent. And when I
That's
talk
fair.
about regimes, the guy who coined this term was a guy named Emmanuel Derman, who's written a couple books. He wrote a book called My Life as a Quant. He was like the head quant at Goldman Sachs in the late 90s. And he wrote a paper published by Goldman called Regimes and Volatility. And that's where people really started to think about volatility regimes, either in a low vol regime or a high vol regime. So we are clearly in a low vol regime right now. And we are like, we're going to walk in one day and the VIX is going to be 20 bid, and it's going to be ugly. So
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt that that is how it happens eventually. And then we spend some time with really elevated volatility. And when the VIX stays elevated for more than 5 or 6, 7 sessions in a row, it's really hard to know where you are in terms of trying to pick a bottom in that spin cycle. Like it's just terrifying to be able to say, when the VIX stays elevated, it's just too difficult to try to say this is a low. No, this is a good low. No, that's a good low. So if anything, my favorite thing is when there's a gigantic spike higher in the VIX and the market is dislocated way lower on a gap type of thing. That's something that I buy every time in the markets, but we'll see how it transpires this way. What are your thoughts about? I want to talk about a little politics, but as it relates to the markets. You and I were talking about the Trump trade, right? Which could be something that happens in the next couple of months. What's your angle on the Trump trade?
yeah, so I think the Trump trade is happening. Since the debate, a couple of things have happened. So number one, stocks are up, right? And number two, the curve has steepened quite a bit, like not a huge amount, but 20 or 30 basis points. It has steepened. First, it kind of bear steepened a little bit, then it kind of bull steepened a little bit. The curve steepening is really the Trump trade, right? And the whole idea behind that is Trump is going to shit all over the Fed and lean on them to cut rates. And we're going to price in inflation in the back end of the curve. A lot of people have this on. This is not an original idea. Like a ton of people have this Trump trade on. So the fact that it actually worked in the last couple of weeks, I think is kind of interesting. But what's also interesting is that if you think this is the Trump trade after the debate, then why isn't energy rallying? Like, that's the one part of it that's not working. Like, if you think the Trump trade is on, then XLE should be up 500 basis points here, but it's not. So
I agree with that. So JD, my read on that, just while it's kind of topical on my mind, the XLE, which I am personally long, quite a bit of in terms of percentage of my portfolio, I feel like people are going to have to sort out what drill baby drill Trump admin 2 means, right? And the first thing that it might mean is lower oil prices. Right, we had $1.50 gallon of gas when Trump was in office, or two, but between 1.5 and 2. So that sell-off might be commensurate with an initial pullback in E&P stocks that matches the commodity. But then I think the world is going to realize that the E&P companies now are going to be set up to play ball with a drill baby drill president, and their capex spending is going to go up, and they're going to start earning money hand over fist. Right.
yeah,
So that's one way I look at it. But for me, man, the Trump trade is long the S&P, right? Trump got elected on election day 2016. The S&P was 2084. All right, Braden, you can put that Trump S&P chart in right now, right? S&P was 2084 on election day. It rallied to 3,400 in 2020 before the U.S. released the COVID bioweapon, right? So and ensuing psyop. So that is some move in stocks, right? That is low taxes, low regulation, business-like president, commie out of the White House celebration, the whole thing. So that's why I'm not really willing to part with my stocks right now. I think that the best time to part with them may be when we're pricing in a Trump victory. That's something that I would think about making a huge sale into. Right? Because that's something where the market's going to price it, the news is going to hit, and the market's going to go, that's the end of that rally.
Yeah.
So I could see it playing out like that. But to me, that's where, to me, the Trump trade is freaking hug to your spy trade, man. So we'll see how that goes. You pointed out, what is your angle on home builders? Because you pointed out that the data and the stocks are kind of crapping out. And I looked at the chart. Braden, you can put that one in now. And there is a potential nasty head and shoulders at the top of this. And I'm kind of a home construction secular bull. I'm concerned about that top. What's your read on home construction?
No, I feel the same way. Look, we've done a lot of building in the last 3 or 4 years, going back to 2021, and we are still below where we need to be in terms of number of houses built relative to the amount of people that have come in the country and population growth and stuff like that. So we are still under constructed, right? Mm-hmm. But what's interesting is that XHB, ITB, whatever you want to look at, is down like a smooth 10% in the context of a market that is up 10%. Not only is it bad absolute performance, it's terrible relative performance. So I look at this and I'm kind of puzzled. I'm like, what does this mean? And I don't really know what it means, but I think it's something to pay attention to.
I agree. And like I'm like kind of in the bullpen to trade aggressively in this space because the ITB has just pulled back to a dime to the 200-day moving average. Last time it bounced off the 200-day moving average and went up like 80%. Right after a couple settlements in and around it, it never broke the level and it was gone. Right. So this time around, we're going to see it's either going to hold here, or if it doesn't and it breaks the 200-day moving average, it's the same level as the neckline of that ugly head and shoulders. That could be an everybody out the door moment, and just give us another maybe 10 or 15% pullback to chew on. And that's something that I want to trade because that looks like a technical, like a real sell off in a sector that could happen all by itself. So that's something that's worth watching to me for sure. What about, I want to mention, I just got long silver, JD. What do you think of that? I mean, I just had to stay long it because the breakout's intact. I'm long gold. Silver proves me wrong, which is a big reason for me to get into a trade. If I'm fading something and not thinking it's going to happen, and then all of a sudden, the security puts in all the right moves and notches all those check boxes that you're like, oh, I'm wrong. This thing's going up. And so that's why I bought silver. What do you think of this? Is this sustainable? You still think $50?
Yeah, I do. Gold and silver are still technically very strong. Gold has been tough because, put in the high at 2430, traded down to 2300. It's been between 2300 and 2400 the last 2 months. It's been consolidating, but there's been a huge amount of volatility, a lot of intraday volatility. Like you're seeing within this range, you're seeing $30 swings up and down from day to day. And it's very, as a holder of gold, it's very disconcerting. Like it makes me kind of nervous. But I think that gold, if it's acting well, technically you should see volatility on the highs. And silver is broken out. I mean, there's going to be volatility, but just hang on to it, and it's going to be fine. So
I tend to agree. I think you're going to find that silver, one of the things that you learn on a precious metals desk at Goldman Sachs is that higher prices in gold wake up sellers, higher prices in silver wake up buyers. Right? People see silver's going on the run. They are not afraid to be like, oh, yeah, give me some 30s, give me some 35s, give me some 40s, because they have no idea where the hell the thing could go on the upside. So that's kind of the exciting part of the silver trade. Let's talk about, we've got CPI tomorrow. To refresh everyone's memory, that will be CPI for June. CPI for May was a double donut. That was a great point to buy stocks on. Is that dynamic going to hold on here, JD, if we still see no inflation in tomorrow's data? Is it going to be another leg up for the stock market?
Well, first of all,
tell the truth. Tell the truth.
I mean, first of all, this podcast is going to come out after CPI, right?
Yeah.
So, where the expected number is 3.1, we got 3.3 the last time. I struggle to see how you get a bearish number unless it's 3.3 or higher. I think even 3.2 is at least neutral or bullish, right? And if it comes in line, it's 3.1. If it comes in 2.9, the S&P is it's gonna gap up 1.5%.
Exactly.
So.
Yeah. That's the mode that we're in, right? That's just the mode that we're in the S&P now. This thing has hurdled so many difficult topics and subjects. We had Jensen Huang signing boobs. We had the NVIDIA split. I mean, the stock market's not supposed to weather that stuff, right? And we weathered it, and now there's no place to go but the number go up. So I totally agree. Like if we come in with another month-over-month donut CPI tomorrow, people are going to be like, take stocks and fucking bid them, please. And I tell you, the one thing that I find amazing is that you read the papers and you can actually get a real World War III scare. And you look at the VIX, and the VIX is like, go back to your country club, mate. Have a gin and tonic and relax, will you? And it's just like, I don't know what to think about that anymore, but it's blowing my mind a little bit. Do you want to talk about the Trump-Biden debate a little bit?
Well, Biden did everything but shit his pants. I mean, that was actually a pretty good prediction that he would shit his pants because he came pretty close.
He looked terrible. He sounded terrible, right?
I mean, he was significantly addled when he was elected, but his decline in the last 6 months has been dramatic. He's not going to live 4 more years. I mean, I don't know if you saw the video of after the debate where they're helping him off the stage. It's incredible. So
it is. I tell you though, the one thing, the golf conversation that they had within that debate, where Biden claimed he was a 6 handicap and Trump called him out, and then Biden's handicap went to 8 in the next sentence, and you were like, what the fuck's going on here? Like, this is a comedy show, right? And Trump's calling him out. I've seen his swing. I mean, that was, to me, is like, there were so many great memes on that. There were two brothers that dressed up as like younger kids and did the voiceover to that, but like 2 kids arguing to their mom about who's the better golfer. And it was one of the funniest things I've seen on the internet.
I mean, really, the thing you have to think about is, Biden does not want to quit. So you're looking at probably Kamala Harris, which Trump polls very well against. I mean, Kamala polls better against Trump than Biden does at this point, but, Trump probably beats Kamala. Trump, matched up with anybody else, with the possible exception of Gretchen Whitmer and Josh Shapiro. That's, yeah. So,
but what if she gets kidnapped again? What a fucking joke that was. Anyway, that was amazing. The whole thing, who he's going to run against is is embarrassing, right? If Kamala Harris is a candidate after being Montel Williams' like third
Oh,
date,
by the way, there's
right?
something I want to talk about.
Yeah.
Who do you think? I'm going to ask you. Who do you think Trump should pick his VP, and who do you think he will pick his VP?
Man, I there's something about I don't know exactly what I think about Vivek, but I do think that he would be a potentially good a VP pick for Trump, like a younger guy with all of his energy and the ability to dismantle the sort of media without breaking a sweat. Like, I think that that would be an important, powerful guy. I don't think Trump is going to pick him. And I don't necessarily think that he's really the right choice overall. I think it would be smart for him to pick somebody like J.D. Vance or maybe Ben Carson, whose name has been in the mix a little bit. So I got a feeling he goes with somebody a little bit more esoteric like that, where I don't have a great view. I'm not a great political predictor, but I'd love to know what you think.
So I think he should pick J.D. Vance.
Yeah,
And have you read Hillbilly Elegy? Have you read that book?
I did.
Did you
I
really?
did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I listened to it. And
it.
I thought it was okay. Like, I came away with it with a good message, but I kind of slogged through it. I thought it was kind of difficult.
You're talking about a guy that grew up in the hills of Kentucky, sleeping on a dirt floor, that made it to Yale Law School, writing a best-selling book, working as a venture capitalist, getting elected to the Senate. Like, this is an American story. You know what I mean? And
Fair.
I don't really agree with a lot of JD Vance's politics. I disagree with him on a lot. But he's young. I want to say he's like early 40s.
Mm-hmm.
And he's smart, he's articulate. You know, people have been talking about Burgum. Burgum is super rich and he can raise a lot of money and he brings the money angle to it, but he is about as inspiring as Dan Quayle. Like, JD Vance would really put some, oomph in the ticket. So,
You know what I like about JD Vance on the ticket is that it brings an element of stoicism to the ticket, right? Where Trump has got almost too much charisma, all over the map. And you got JD Vance, who's a really measured, calm, almost kind of lacking high level personality, right? Have you heard him speak? He speaks he speaks very powerfully, but very calmly and very like he's just, there's no emotion to him, which I kind of like. And I think that's a good balance for Trump.
Yeah.
If people see a little bit of showman and a little bit of like stoicism, like, I'm just doing the job here, man. You know what I mean? And I'm just getting it done. I think that would sell. What else can we talk about that's off topic, JD?
Let's talk about. I want to talk about my book.
Sure.
Night Moves.
Short stories.
Yeah, the short stories coming out in October. I'm getting some blurbs back. Joe Oesterreich, who wrote a book called Hitless Wonder, has said this collection sizzles.
Nice.
Which is a good blurb.
Yeah.
Barbara Claypole White, who has written a bunch of books, she's a best-selling author. She said, "I dare you to read one story." She basically, she read it like a novel. She read it like in one sitting. And
very cool.
I got to tell you, this is going to be a great, great short story collection. So
that's awesome. Yeah. And you sent me one when you just finished it called 200 Days.
200 Hours.
Oh, hours. Excuse me, 200 Hours. And I really enjoyed that. That was a kind of that was a very mixed up love story that was really, really fun to navigate and had a cool ending. So I embrace those kind of stories.
Yeah.
They're a great change for me from, I'm totally off visual books now. Like, I only listen to books. So short stories on audio might be a cool thing.
That this book is not going to have an audio book for two reasons.
No?
For two reasons. So number one, I don't like recording my own audiobooks. Like, I don't want to read my own book. It's tedious. It sucks. So I hire other people to do it. How much it costs depends on how many words it is. So this would cost probably about $3,000, which means I have to sell about
$3,000 out of your pocket. Sorry, go ahead.
Out of my pocket, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, it
means I have to sell like 500 or 600 audiobooks to break even.
I get that.
That's a lot.
And
the other thing is that with literature, I mean, it's one thing if it's nonfiction, like no worries, but with literature, I think people should read it, as opposed to listen to it. So yeah, no
That's fair.
audiobook on this one.
That's fair. It's totally better, but for me, that somebody spends so much time walking dogs and riding a
How
bicycle
is the
or
dog?
a travel. Well, we have two now. My daughter's is back, and so we have my English lab Beckham, who's 4.5, and now we've got Mocha, who is half Doberman and half Bulldog, and 2 years old in the house. And let me tell you, she's a piece of work. Yeah. She Beckham doesn't get a moment's peace with her around, and she shits everywhere outside. Like Beckham finds a nice spot in the corner in the grass. Mocha will walk out my front door and shit on my welcome mat. And you're like, what the fuck's with this dog, Jesse? To my sister, and she's like, we walk around on concrete in Miami a lot. What do you want me to tell you? So, but I do love having them. They are man, they're always there when you need them. And my dog Beckham couldn't love the guy anymore. Yep. How the cats? Let's touch on it.
Cats are good. They love the new house. Yeah.
They love the space.
Yellow is cat of the month. She won cat of the month. So
do you ever have trouble rounding them up? Like where is Uma or where is?
So they all go to bed at night in a room. We have a cat room, and all 7 of them go to sleep in that room at night. And awesome. It's a little bit of a challenge. It's herding cats, trying to get them to go in the room. Like we feed them at night and they want to eat. So some of them go up there, but some of them are like, screw you, I want to hang out downstairs. And, it's herding cats. So
it's interesting. What's easy about dogs is that they're dying to go to bed at night. So I get down, my head hits the pillow, and I hear him jump into the leather chair right next to my bed, and he's snoring in 30 seconds. It's actually pretty awesome. So, the other thing, we both touched on this. The Gladiator 2 preview is out. Any thoughts?
Ridley Scott has not made a good movie in a long time. And I saw Denzel Washington. I was like, oh, this is going to be interesting, but it does not look very good. It does not look very good. I think this was a mistake.
I should have left it alone. Yeah. I mean, the storyline sets up for a great sequel if you do it great.
Yep.
Right. And I got excited to hear Denzel, and then I started watching the plot of the trailer, and I'm like, what is going on here? Like, I'm not into this. So maybe Gladiator 2 is a bust like most of the other sequels. What's your favorite sequel of all time?
Clendathu Cap's take on this.
He is a movie buff, right?
Yeah.
He watches everything. I've DM'd him randomly and been like, give me a movie to watch, and who comes back with 6? And you're like, dude, dear God, I can't watch 6 movies in half a year. I just want one.
I'll give you a movie recommendation. Yeah. Have you ever seen Looper?
No.
You never heard of Looper? So it's Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Bruce Willis, Emily Blunt. It's a sci-fi movie. It takes place in the future. I think it is low key the best sci-fi movie ever made.
Wow.
It is unbelievable. And Clendathu Cap agrees with me on this. Like, he thinks it is the best sci-fi movie ever made. Outside of Interstellar, but you gotta watch it. It's really, really good. So
I will watch that. I gave your last recommendation a try as well. What was the one about the Washington boating team?
Oh, Boys in the Boat. Good story, little long, kind of dragged a little bit, and it's a little soft with all that, the rowing and the other stuff. But it was an okay story. It was okay to watch. I didn't think it was great, but I'm glad I saw it, kind of thing. Yep. And the thing about Boys in the Boat is that is a pro-America feel-good movie that nobody makes anymore.
Yes.
And it did very well in the box office because people are craving this type of stuff. They're craving this type of content.
Dude, you nailed that so spot on, because when I was watching that, I was literally getting flashbacks of being a kid getting psyched up in the next Disney movie. Like, do you remember those times when the next Disney movie came out and like, it was like, it was after it was after that 10,000 Dalmatians like era, right? But when we were young kids, like there was a new Disney. I got to get some of the name of them, like movies like Pippi Longstocking, right? That are just super fun. And like, you're like, oh man, I'm about to dive into this world. And that's when movies were fun to me.
Yeah.
And they recently became a lot less fun because there's not enough of that where we're just going to dive into this nice world and have a great story happen. Everything, there's so much violence and crummy stuff in the movies now that it kind of turns me off quite a bit.
Yep.
So it's nice to see that good, wholesome stuff. Is there anything we didn't tackle in our 30-minute dirt cast today, JD? Is there anything we left out?
I don't think so. I think we got everything.
Yeah, I think we're good. We're going to close off here with the S&P back at 5650. It just popped to a new high of 5655 to make me look good. My trailing stop is kind of bumping up along here as we go to new highs, and it's going to be exciting to follow this trade through fruition. But I got my hand on the sell button. I just need to have a good excuse, and I haven't seen one yet, and I may not see one for 6 months. So that's what I'm going to try to stay in it, man.
Yep.
We're going to sign off now, JD, and we're going to pick it up next week. You and I are about to go on a Pete Rose hitting streak type of streak with the Macro Dirtcast because our audience is extremely excited about it. I've been getting amazing feedback from great places, really, really sharp people in the world and in the markets, and it's coming from everywhere, and I'm really psyched. So I'm excited for next week already.
How about an Anthony Volpe hitting streak? He got up to like 28 or 29 this year, but he's in the pits right now. So.
I know. All right, we'll start with that. But Pete Rose is one of my favorite baseball players of all time, and man, he was fun to watch. The 76 Reds that spanked the living crap out of the Yankees in the 76 World Series. That was one of the funnest teams in baseball history to watch.
Yep.
All right, JD. We're going to sign off here and pick it up next week. That's Macro Dirtcast number 3, closing it out. Have a good day, everybody. Hasta la vagina.